reports as well. So let's start with any questions you have about the editorial process or questions generally about what I presented. Anyone?
Thank you. I have a short question because we went through the long way to ESCI index, starting with the very regional journal. Now we are covered by Web of Science, and we are present in the ESCI since 2015. So 15, 16, 17. So according regarding to your speech, we should be evaluated for ASCI yet, yes?
We do that automatically. Can I answer that?
Yes, but
Okay, so this, after 3 years, this is the precise amount of time that it takes for a journal to improve in our view, especially with regard to citations. So I think it is appropriate for you at this point to submit a request by the website that Jeff presented, asking them, is it asking for a reevaluation for SCIE, is it? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And then I want to recommend that after 3 months, and this is a general comment to everyone, when you submit a journal for evaluation, wait at least 3 months before you start pestering them. But it is important that you be persistent in asking the question, what is the status of my journal? And the reason I'm saying that is because there are so many thousands of journals queued up for evaluation. We're trying to keep everything in priority, but as we're building staff right now to accommodate the huge amount of journals. And it sometimes happens that you may be delayed in your reevaluation. So don't hesitate to request the status of the journal.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
So the 3 journals that I showed on the highway and what happened to them, I showed that radar graph with the different points. The idea is for you to have access to that as the publisher, so that you can see what happened and the measurements that we made. That is not up and running yet, but that's the ideal that we're shooting for with this system as well.
Agnieszka Piernik from Toruń Ecological Question Journal. My question is very similar to the previous one because we have submitted our journal for evaluation in 2014. We got decision to be included in all collection. So as I understand, we are already in SCE. And I asked a few times about the status of the journal, but unfortunately I didn't get any information.
I think in a case like that, if you could see me afterward and give me a note, give me some information about the journal, and I can carry that back and ask them directly to contact you about the status of the journal. And this is not an excuse, but it is a reason why it might be delayed, because the influx of journals, because of the ESCI, is so great, and because it's taking us time to build up staff to meet this demand. So you'll please pardon us for the time being, but give me your information, and I will personally carry it back and get you an answer.
Any other questions? Come on. No? Okay.
Ivana Zek, Polish archaeology in the Mediterranean, which sounds like a great name for a journal, and it is, but it's published by a small research unit within the University of Warsaw. Yeah. And our articles come from our staff, which is minimal, and from people from the University of Warsaw, which the discipline in Poland is not that great. Mm-hmm. And I've been told on previous occasions that despite the fact that my journal is actually read around the world, not in Poland, that I'm a local journal that has no chance to go anywhere because of the source of my authors.
Yes.
What would
This is
be a solution?
This is not a unique question. I've heard this before. So the source, if I could just reiterate this, the source of your authors are from
University of Warsaw,
mostly
which is
from
our-
one university.
Yeah.
Okay. This points to the criteria, the third one here, about international diversity. The fact that your journal is focused on papers from one university is not a reflection of the quality of the journal. It is a reflection of the intended target audience for the journal. This is a journal that is a vehicle for the research that's published in your university on a subject that is, why there are many journals on this subject or that treat this in a rather more multidisciplinary journal. So when we say that we're looking for diversity, we're looking for journals that have not just many countries contributing to them through their authorship and editorial board, but also a number of institutions, because we're trying to get a broader perspective on a particular topic. Again, it is not a reflection of the quality of the journal. It's simply a reflection of the standard that we have put in place. Now, is this the question that's going to come up? Is this standard appropriate going forward? Is there a place in ESCI for journals that are strictly from one university? This is the question that you're bringing up and that I'm taking quite seriously. I think there is a place for journals like this. And Jeffrey pointed out to you the idea of the massive investment that we've made in indexing and how expensive it is for us to do it. It's becoming less and less expensive as we receive journals in electronic format. If you send us a journal in HTML or XML, it is very easy and cost efficient for us to bring that into the database with minimal errors, human errors included in the transfer of data. The idea of having a number of journals that simply represent the work of one research university is something that we are just beginning to think about. Personally, in the evolution of Web of Science that I have seen, I see that this is the next level for us. My personal goal
Nice to be the future.
My personal goal is for us to cover everything with SCIE, SSCI, and NHCI continuing to hold the core place, to be the center of science, social science, and humanities research. But there's no reason why surrounding that we should not have everything that exists in the world of scholarly communication, because impact is only one measure of quality, and it's only one way to measure the prestige of a university. If you are a humanities university, citations are not coming to you, but your output on a subject is extremely important and reflects the work that's going on there. So in the humanities especially, it's not about citations, it's about specificity of content. A journal that has can you repeat the name of your journal?
Polish Archaeology in the Mediterranean.
This is exactly it. You have archaeology, big topic, but you have archaeology in the Mediterranean, subset. And then you have on top of that Polish archaeology in the Mediterranean. I could not ask for a more specific title. So we need to talk about your approach to Web of Science. But I think that for the moment, it's going to be a challenge because we have many archaeology journals, and they're from their authorship is rather more diverse. So please be patient.
Okay.
And this is part of the message that I'm going to be carrying back. Why are we ignoring this kind of work? Okay? And the reason is, historically, is because we're looking we're trying to approach an international audience. And international audiences, we want to reflect in our authorship and in the journals that we cover the international perspective on a particular subject. Polish archaeology in the Mediterranean, however, is different. Its prestige and its importance is rather specific, and its audience may be rather narrow. But to that audience, it is the most important journal and the most important subject. So let's stay with this. And I'm going to remind.
Because all the rest of the stuff I've already got
I
in
know,
place.
I know. So thank you. Great question.
I would just add that, when we do get around to doing it, I mean, the important thing then is the scope of the articles that appear in your publication meet the audience that the Web of Science is intended for, and the specificity of the content. I mean, so and the standards, then there's no reason why we wouldn't cover it then. Once we move in that direction,
Right.
really. Thank you. Other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Marek Gruszczyński from Gospodarka Narodowa and Central European Journal of Economic Modeling and Econometrics. My first journal is not yet in ESCI, but the second one has been admitted. But the question is about something else. If you go back or forward to one of your slides, there's a list of languages. There is even a Tagalog language, but there's no Polish there. Why?
We have to go to that slide because I'm not exactly sure what he's
It's about
referring
the
to.
editors and what languages they cover, directly cover today. About the objectivity, and it says we cover these languages, Mandarin, blah,
And
blah,
it doesn't say Polish?
It does not. Well,
That doesn't make.
It's very true that we don't have someone on the editorial team.
We actually do not have a Polish speaker on the editorial team now. Okay. Again, this is extremely valuable information for us, because Poland is not in the orbit of Slavic countries. Poland is a rather important yes. So I think, and I also think that with the way that we're building editorial development, we're building editorial development. In my day, we were all seated in Philadelphia. All of my editors were seated in Philadelphia. They came from all over, I have someone from Romania, I have Chinese, I have people who speak many different languages, Philippines, all of this. But now, it's important for us to be here, not in Philadelphia, okay? So the way that Dr. Annette Thomas and our direct boss, Dr. Nandita Quadere, are looking at things is that this mission that we have to provide you with an objective set of criteria for you to build good journals needs to be communicated personally and at a higher frequency. I haven't been to Poland in 10 years, okay? This is far too long. But I have colleagues in Barcelona who are now making their way throughout the European Union and the Middle East to hold workshops for individuals who have, we'll collect maybe 20 or 30 journal editors. Come in and we'll talk the whole day about your journal. So this is the future of editorial development, with editors in Philadelphia, but also in London, in Barcelona, in Paris, in Berlin, in Warsaw. Why not? So that we can do this outreach, because I think we had this discussion at the break. The two things that we do: we build content for Web of Science. That's the first thing that we do. And the second thing that we do is provide you with these objective criteria. And in order to do that, I think these things are totally wedded together. Without your content, we have no Web of Science. So it is extremely important to us to help you communicate your research effectively and efficiently through the criteria that we're laying out for you in this journal selection process, which are fundamental. So please be patient a little while longer. This is a very good message for me to carry back about where we need new editorial staff. And I think Slavic countries are far too, they're underrepresented, no doubt.
And you outlined, our colleague from the Ministry of Science and Education outlined what you're doing in the ministry to look at publishing and the standards and things. We have to have someone closer to that to understand it and to work with you so that we know what's going on. And I think that's critical.
Other questions?
Anyone? Oh, so here's one.
Yeah.
Klaudia Szawowska, Wolters Kluwer, Poland. We spoke a little bit at the break, but I have one more question because I know that you pay a lot of attention to the visibility of web pages. Do you also take into consideration the PDF documents, or everything has to be in HTML?
We do accept journals that are in PDF. For ESCI, for ESCI, it simply needs to be in electronic format. PDF, XML, HTML.
Okay, because for example, sometimes we have like peer reviewing policy in a PDF document.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Are you submitting the journal in PDF?
No, we are not submitting because we are, as I said, at the end of the list, because we publish around 10 magazines on law, which is,
law is
a
difficult.
very difficult
Law
science.
is difficult. Law, like university journals, there's no limit to them. Every law school has a review, a journal, and it's very difficult for us to select which one is the most important. They're all important, but how do we decide which one we should cover? This is a big problem. Again, my view of the world is that we should cover all of them, okay, somewhere, so that you have access. But this is a little bit in the distance.
Yeah, especially that we have a problem that we are a commercial publisher, so open access, it's not a good solution for us.
By the way, open access is certainly a wonderful way to distribute your material throughout the world, but it is not necessary for coverage in Web of Science. The business model of the journal, we're completely neutral in that regard. It can be a subscription-based journal, or it can be open access. It doesn't matter to us. If it is open access, as Jeffrey pointed out, we'll note that on Web of Science. We're simply looking at the criteria and the quality of the journal. That's our concern.
Any other questions? No?
I want to, while you're thinking about the next question, because I just know there's another question, I just want to talk about the difference between SCIE, SSCI, and ESCI. Since we built ESCI, it's very, very clear to me the difference between the two is the presence of measurable impact. And by measurable impact, I mean something that is competitive within the categories that you see already in JCR. So there are many journals in ESCI, Emerging Sources Citation Index, that have very high publishing standards, that have novel content, and have diversity that is appropriate for their audience, but they lack citations. Again, citation impact is only one measure of the importance of a journal, okay? So this is why we're expanding coverage to include journals that are important regionally. They may be important to a certain group of scholars in a particular subject, but they don't necessarily have impact. Impact is a very special category. Journals with impact are a very small part of the literature, in fact. And I think that as we move forward, we're going to see the concentration of impact in SSCI and SCIE grow. It is going to become even more difficult, more challenging to enter SSCI and SCIE because, well, just because there's so many more journals that we want to cover, and measurable impact is a very limited commodity. Okay, I mean, to me, a journal with an impact factor of say less than 0.4, this becomes borderline. You know, an impact factor of 1 has very, very clear meaning. The average number of times each article is cited is 1 time. Okay, that's a huge accomplishment. So and it's just one indicator of the quality and the importance of a journal. There are many other things that we're beginning to understand are important about a journal, like the Polish Journal of Mediterranean Archaeology. This is mind-blowing.
Yes, certainly.
Ask about Pablon. We have many problems with finding international reviewers that simply do not answer the request. Can editor can use Pablons to find reviewer or not?
You can. You know, Publons is sold to journals so that you can manage. We'll set up a site for you, and you're managing your peer review using all of the, I think I said it's over 170,000 reviewers are in Publons at this point. So Publons, you can go out to their site and you can search by country and see all of the peer review people for each country. They're listed. For your journal, then, what we can do for you for the journal is set up a process where you're able to communicate automatically with potential reviewers for your manuscripts. So that is something that's called Reviewer Connect at this point, and it integrates the Web of Science data, also Publons data, to allow you to do that. But you can go out to Publons right now to the site and search to see in Poland what researchers have signed up and are members of Publons, because it's free for individuals. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Beata Oleńska. I'm from Wolters Kluwer. I would like about the question of self-citation, and would like you to precise the meaning of this term, how you see it, how you define it.
Okay, this is an excellent question. What is the meaning of self-citation? How do I define that? I define that as citations from the journal to the same journal. Every article in a journal, in a scholarly journal, has a list of cited references to all of the sources to which it refers. Now, as we saw, it is quite normal for self-citation is a normal phenomenon. If an author is publishing on a particular subject and tends to publish in the same journal, it makes sense that as they develop their thesis, they are going to publish their prior work. Okay, this is how self-citation happens quite organically and naturally. When self-citation becomes an editorial policy, in other words, when you submit an article and the editor of the journal says, this is quite a good article, we want to accept it, but I would like you to do something for me. Add 2 or 3 citations to my journal. This is the absolute worst thing that you could possibly do. Not only does it artificially inflate the impact of that journal, but it also weakens the integrity of scientific inquiry itself. So we want to avoid any editorial directives that tell the author who to cite, when to cite, what year to cite. None of that is good. So self-citation is the citation from articles in the journal to that journal itself. When we cover a journal in Web of Science, we index all the cited references, whether they're to journals in the Web of Science or outside. And so if your journal is covered in the Web of Science and the article in that journal cites the same journal, it's going to count towards your impact factor. As we pointed out, up to 15% is what we're seeing across 85% of journals. And I dispute the fact that it depends on the size of the field. It does not. I did a study on andrology, which is, there's maybe 6 journals in andrology. And the self-citation rate was at a normal level, the same as it is in huge categories. There was some aberration because there was a Chinese journal in there that was doing something funny with citations. But self-citation, as a rule, regardless of field, is typically no higher than 20%, but mostly 15% and lower. And that happens just because of the natural practice of authors to cite things that are truly relevant to the article at hand. Okay? Yes, sir.
Because I represent quite old journal, but kind of niche. Is a Archives of Foundry Engineering, so journal about foundry engineering, metallurgy. So there is a number of authors, but not that much. And we are new in ESCI, so since 2015. Okay. So I believe that for a journal like us is quite typical situation when we have the level of safe citation much higher at the beginning.
It seems to be okay.
Yeah, it seems to be okay. If we are getting better, it's okay. Yes.
Listen, the only thing I want to tell you, let the authors cite the appropriate articles.
Yeah.
Just let them do it. Do not interfere in their citation practice. Unless you see, well, you're incomplete here, we can suggest this other citation because that sort of thing. But there is no place in the editorial process for instructions to authors about citing the particular journal that they're publishing in. So even though this is a niche field, let it happen organically. And I can almost guarantee you there'll be no trouble.
Them to cite less, let's say.
No.
Please don't
ask them anything.
Nothing, yeah? Okay.
Let them cite, if these authors, if these researchers have integrity, they will do the right thing.
Okay, thank you.
That's the end of the story. Stay out of the self-citation game. And because of the way that we process citations, it's completely and immediately apparent to anyone who's looking at even Web of Science, you can see it. So there's no winning this. And the other thing that Jeffrey mentioned was this citation stacking. This is where, let's say the journal is Nature, and there's a what do you call this? A cartel. 2 or 3 journals that agree with Nature that they're going to cite articles in Nature's impact factor years. Let's say the year is 2017, and they're going to cite the articles to the previous 2 years, and they agree to do this. Immediately visible to us, and we start to be suspicious about it. More importantly, and this is what you should really understand about citation stacking and any editorial policy with regard to self-citation. Invariably, someone from the community comes to us and say, you need to look at this journal because they're doing something that is unethical. And the reason that they do that is because they, like us, do not want the integrity of Web of Science to be compromised. They want it to be solid because everyone, we and so many of your institutions depend on our metrics for any number of tenure-related issues and so on. So it's kind of beyond our commercial interest in Web of Science into the realm of preserving the integrity of the scientific enterprise. So whenever anything happens that is unethical with a journal, invariably somebody will contact us and say, you should look at this journal because they're doing something that we think is a little bit off, and we do it. But there's also, I have some key editors who have amazing talent at finding these things. So you should tell your colleagues, don't get involved with self-citation or citation stacking any way, shape, or form. It's immediately visible, and we act on it.
Other questions?
Here's one.
Thank you so much. Rafał Godon, University of Warsaw. I established a new journal, which is Pedagogical Culture. It is international.
Say it again.
I established a new journal, which is Pedagogical Culture. It's a new journal, international, but it's new. How important for your assessment is the duration of a publication? I mean, how long should I wait your application? What strategy should I take?
What is the subject?
Pedagogy, philosophy of education, pedagogy mainly. Pedagogy.
Pedagogy? Yes. Pedagogy, okay. So the question is, how old does a journal need to be before you submit it? If you feel strongly about the future of the journal in volume 1, we cover many journals from volume 1, okay? Yeah. And because of the way we analyze citations, we can tell all of these things from looking at any journal, okay? The citation activity for a new journal is non-existent because it hasn't been around long enough. But we can look at the authors and editorial board members and understand what their citation level has been for their past work. And we can see if the journal is able to attract authors of importance in the literature. So if you have high confidence in your journal in volume 1, if you know that you have a good backlog of manuscripts so that timeliness will not fall short, then I don't see why you should wait. Do it as soon as possible. Frequently, when a journal is submitted in volume 2 or 3, we go back to volume 1. So why not, if you're very confident in the journal, it meets all of our standards, you have good authors, you have a very good topic that fits well into our literature, then submit it in volume 1. Go ahead.
And I'd like to add that education and education research in the Emerging Sources Citation Index was the category that grew the most. So by all means, submit it.
And I also think that if your educational research is specific to Poland, that is also a good indicator of the specificity of the topic.
Other questions? Yes.
I would like to ask the opposite question. I represent a journal that has been published for 50 years now. So what about a journal like that? It wasn't published very significantly over the years. We started having the online version in 2012, I guess, so we can date back citations.
So
it's Glottodidactica, that's a journal in teaching languages.
Okay. So the journal has been publishing for 50 years. And who's the audience for the journal?
Teachers and researchers in...
Local, regional,
no,
international?
No, we have authors from different countries in Europe and outside.
And you're simply beginning to approach Web of Science for coverage now?
Yeah, that would be the idea. But we don't have, for example, citations from previous years, like back to the 70s.
That's okay. That's okay. Because if the journal, well, when you submit a journal for evaluation, the citation analysis includes any citation that has ever been made from any journal in Web of Science. So if your journal has been cited even back to when? 1968, we're going to see it, okay? And the way that the data is presented, all the citations to a citation index is simply an alphabetical list of all the citations that have occurred within a given year. So your journal is going to be cited pretty much the same way. All the citations will cluster together, and we'll be able to put those variants together and see what the total citation is. It's because of the journal is a Polish language journal. It's in German and English. Full text in which?
The idea is we have 4 conference languages: German, English, French, and Russian, and that's been from the very beginning like that.
So all 3 languages in every...
Four. Russian, German, English, and French. And that was the tradition from the very beginning.
Wow. So every article is in 4 languages?
No, we accept
in those 4 different languages.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
No,
and you have English language abstracts?
Yeah.
Okay, then you're covered. I think that the most important thing here, regardless of the full text of the article, as Jeffrey pointed out, for ESCI, we must have English language bibliographic information, article titles, abstracts, keywords, and Roman alphabet for cited references. I say that I always say that because I'm so used to speaking in Asia, where they have to learn to put things in Roman alphabet. It's normal here. So the important thing is the language of that you have English language bibliographic information.
Additional questions? No one? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I really like the way the editor from Opuscula Mathematica presented his strategy, for the journal. Is there any advice you would give, or a non-exhaustive list of things that the journal editor should look at before they submit, before they apply to be indexed in one of our indexes?
Okay. I think the most important thing is timeliness, because if your journal is not publishing on time, we can see that just like that. Okay? Immediately rejected. Okay? So the most important thing is to make sure that you have, if you've been publishing for quite some time, get a backlog of issues that are on time and make sure that for the next year, you're never going to miss an issue. If you're publishing 1 article at a time online, make sure that you have, 20 articles every month or so, every 2 or 3 months, whatever is the norm for your subject matter. Clinical medicine publishes more than some education journals. What is the norm for your category? Make sure that you're going to be refreshing the content continually, either by individual issues or by unique articles. Timeliness is the most important, it's the most common reason for quick rejection. Once we establish timeliness, we cannot do any of the other steps until we have established timeliness. So do not fall down on timeliness, okay? Online timeliness, yeah, I'm not sure that I know any journals that are publishing only in print these days. There might be one, but most journals have an electronic presence. So if you're publishing 1 article at a time, online, make sure that the stream of content is steadily refreshed. If you're publishing an issue every quarter, every month, make sure that it is exactly on time. Now, why is this an important thing? It's important because it indicates that the journal has interest in the community, that there are people who are interested not only in the topic, but in publishing in this journal. And it also is an indicator of the future health of the journal. If you think of a common periodical that you might read, and the example that I give many times, New York Times, let's say, or the Wall Street Journal, or Time Magazine, everyone wakes up every day and they say, I'm going to go see what happens in New York Times. How frequently does Time publish? Weekly? I'm going to look and see what happens. Imagine if they were a day late. You would say, well, this is not a reputable, I can't rely on this source. But if your journal is in front of its audience on time, every single time, they're going to become accustomed to seeing it. They're going to anticipate it, especially if they're following a certain trend in research. So timeliness is the most fundamental and the most important initial consideration in submitting for evaluation. All the other material is, whether the topic is specific, you've already decided whether or not that's true. And your ability to gather authors that are appropriate to your audience, that's also something that you have to do. If you do these three things appropriately, the fourth thing, the citation, will follow. It automatically follows, especially, as long as I have a few minutes to say this, I'm going to. If you ask me, the most important thing is here, the editorial content, okay? There are enough journals in the world. We don't need another journal. But if we have the audacity to publish a new journal, we have to be sure that its content is really novel, that we're not just duplicating something that already exists. Okay? If we're doing an archaeology journal, general archaeology, a journal that's called archaeology, who needs it? But if you have a journal that is called Philadelphia Archaeology in Poland, then somebody is going to say, wow, this is a radically new topic. So in every subject area, we see this constantly. In biology is a huge category, but then in time, we see small clusters of articles around certain topics, articles on environmental biology, evolutionary biology, and suddenly there are journals that are on those topics. So it's important that whatever category you're in, that the subject that you're pulling together it's a subset of the larger category and has a sense of being unique. There is not a need for another general journal. There is a need for journals in emerging topics. So it's your job to understand what those emerging topics are and produce a journal therefrom.
Can I fulfill the topic of timeliness? Because I don't know if our guest represents the journal that is issued on a yearly basis. Yes? What are we going to do then? It's like, okay. Submission, free current journal. So do they have to wait 3 years to start?
This is the question. If you're publishing an annual journal, it would be ridiculous to have you wait for 3 years. So is anyone here publishing an annual journal? Okay. Have you been publishing for more than 3 years? Okay. We're going to be able to see that. So when we get the current issue, we're going to just notice that you've published for 3 years. And that many times substitutes for waiting for the 3 issues, the quarterlies, the monthlies, and so on. This makes perfect sense. Otherwise, we'd never get finished with so many of them. But for an annual journal is something of an exception as far as looking for timeliness is concerned.
Anybody else?
Maybe, I don't know if this topic was not concerned before, but can we say something about the title changes? How it's impact the journal? Because maybe you're considering the change of a title nowadays?
Okay. Title change is a very, very serious undertaking. And I think it's a good idea to change the title of your journal if the content of your journal has shifted to a rather more specific topic. Then you need to do it. If the journal is covered in Web of Science already, let's say it has an impact factor already. When you make the title change, there will be a delay in the impact factor for the new title. In other words, if you change your title in 2018, having published the journal on, let's say it's called Journal of Science, and Journal of Science changes its title to Journal of New Science in 2018. The 2018 impact factor is going to be to the old title, Journal of Science, not the new Journal of New Science. Journal of Old Science is going to get an impact factor for 2 years. And then at the end of in the third year, the Journal of New Science will have enough content to reflect back and see what the impact factor for the new title is. But there's always going to be a cross-reference between the new title and the old title. The only thing that changes is that the new title will not get its impact factor until it has actually been publishing for 2 years, because the impact factor is based on a bibliographic analysis of the literature. It's about titles, okay? Not about editorial boards. It's about the actual title that got cited. The cross-reference is there, but the actual number is going to be associated only with the journal when it has enough years to make a valid impact factor calculation.
Does it impact the evaluation process? Like, you know, if I want to submit the journal, let's say in June, and then I'm thinking to change the title in July or before that.
No, you could do it, but it would be confusing.
So
I think
better not to. Yes, that's the message.
I think it would be better to wait until if you submit the journal and then change the title immediately, it's a little confusing. But there's nothing technically. There's no impediment. But does it really make sense? I think not. I think you should wait until the new title is established. Yes.
My name is Karolina Kosińska. I'm from Kwartalnik Filmowy, which is a strange thing here because it's about film studies. So we are not very much into science. This is something between literature and science. And my problem is about this novelty, because we are the journal in Polish for Polish audience. And the people we are publishing, they are Polish scholars. And we very strongly believe in Polish language because we want to develop the Polish terminology in film studies. So we may not be very international and not very novel, but we are very important on this market, let's say.
Yes.
So what's our situation?
Can I ask you about the format of the journal? Is any part of it in English language?
No.
No. At the moment, that is something that's a difficulty for us. We do actually have journals now that are in languages other than English that have been evaluated by editors who are familiar with those languages. We can also use translation tools to understand, just put in the title and get a machine translation of it to understand what the topic is. It's something of an impediment, but not completely.
We have metadata in English, everything, like abstracts and...
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Then perfect, because Polish film study, is Poland view of all film or Poland view of Polish film?
No, it's a Polish view on international film.
Okay, this is in the humanities. Again and again, I'm going to tell you that specificity of content and high publishing standards are the key elements that we're looking for, because their citations, journal citations to this journal are non-existent, I'm guessing. It might be cited by books 10 years from now, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter. It's the content. The content is what is important now. Its value in research needs to be determined at a later date. But if this Polish Journal of Film Studies has English language bibliographic information, then there's no problem in submitting it. Is the English language bibliographic information 100%?
Well, we have like bibliographic information in Polish and English, like everything
For
that is
every
cited.
article.
Yeah.
Then perfect. We can do it. We can do it.
Fine.
I like
Thank
the
you.
topic. I like the topic. And while I'm looking at somebody who learned today that their journal was covered in ESCI, this may happen. And I regret that you find out in a situation like this that you've had that success. But it points to the need for you to continually write and communicate with our publisher relations department to get the status of the journal. I think once every quarter is a good interval, okay? Sometimes I've had situations where people write to me and say, oh, my colleague tells me that they saw my article in Web of Science and nobody told me. Oh, it's kind of embarrassing, and this is not an excuse, but because we're building ES, Emerging Sources Citation Index, we have so many applications that the staff is having trouble keeping up. And Dr. Annette Thomas is slowly but surely building the staff to deal with this. So I beg your forgiveness and ask for patience while we get this done. Any other questions?
Yeah, that's me.
I just realized we have more time, so let me ask another question. No, that's quite important because I got it from the field. Yes, I'm being asked about it, and since we got you here, can you tell us English language? That's what we're talking. But then you said Roman alphabet, right? Is that okay if it works for you? If cited references, because I know we need to have a translation for title and abstract, but what about the cited references? Is that okay to put it in the Polish language without
Cited references need to be in Roman alphabet, and as far as I know, Polish language is in Roman alphabet, correct?
We got this diacritic
But sometimes in Cyrillic?
We got,
we have for Cyrillic, we have experts who transliterate.
See my name on the very bottom, the last word. It has this diacritic sign. N.
Yeah.
Yes. So did you accept that?
Jeffrey?
We would just key that as an N.
Okay.
Diacritical is not included.
So it can stay like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's more troubling in Arabic languages that publish in Roman alphabet because the diacriticals change everything, and I'm going to Egypt tomorrow to start talking with them about their journal program, and one of the things that I'm going to bring home for sure is how we're going to ingest those diacriticals that are in languages like Polish and certainly in Arabic languages.
Yeah, so we heard a lot about that the main challenge for Polish journals is to attract good authors and reviewers. We work with the best, so do you know about any good practices that can help get that solved?
I'm going to answer first. Before we had Publons, which changes everything about the way that you find reviewers. I think that it's possible to use Web of Science itself to find reviewers. You can search Web of Science and find all the authors on your subject, and their addresses are there. So that's a way to approach the community of peer reviewers. But as Jeffrey pointed out, with Publons, you can be rather more specific and go to people who actually are they're used to being called upon as peer reviewers in your specific subject and region, whatever it might be. But Web of Science itself is a huge source of information about experts in your field who you might be able to approach to do peer review. And Publons, of course, multiplies that exponentially.
And the tool that I described when I was presenting to you, Reviewer Connect, is a new tool. It's independent of any other system. It incorporates Web of Science data and Publons, so you could search this tool, and it will show you Web of Science authors that have done peer review and what titles they've done the peer review on. So by discipline as well. So that will give you an idea of a way to contact, and the tool allows you then to contact the authors as well. Peer review is very critical, I think. It's something that's very important.
We had a journal last year that really helped us to understand the extremely important nature of ethical peer review. I don't think it's any secret. I can tell you the name of the journal. It was called Tumor Biology, and it was reported to us through Retraction Watch, which is a website that keeps track of retractions of articles. You may know this. That the journal had, in 2017, had retracted more than 100 articles from the previous year. And it was, the journal belonged to Springer. And then all of this business was taking place, and then it sold the journal to Sage, and Sage realized what was happening, and they corrected everything. But still, we had a year or more of articles that had been retracted, and the reason that they were retracted is because of shoddy. Do you know this word, shoddy? This means inappropriate, this means poor, this means unethical peer review. So it was a very hard decision because we knew that the new publisher was making every effort to change the situation, hiring new editorial boards and making sure that everything was squeaky clean. But we had to drop the journal because we didn't know what else was out there that was going to be retracted. So we stopped coverage of the journal, and we're going to wait for 2-3 years to see what happens before we bring it back. So peer review, I think, is the cornerstone of the entire enterprise of scientific scholarly communication. We're in a place, we're at a time in the world where scholarship, science, is being attacked by people who would like to believe that something else is happening, that global warming is made up by left-wing people. And we cannot afford to make one misstep, because if a scandal arose and it was shown that all this, let's say there was environmental scientists who were caught doing something, this would be a disaster, because people would use it for political advantage or for whoever, you know. I don't want to go too far into this because it's politics, but I think you know what I mean. Peer review is our guarantee that what's being presented in the scholarly journal is really authentic and solid research based on ethical practices and really well-performed research. How do you eliminate poor reviewers? How do you eliminate them? Elimination is a very strong word. I don't know about elimination. I think we could have a serious talk with them and maybe try and get them to improve their ways, but I think replacement is the better practice. Let's avoid elimination.
There's been a lot of questions about whether reviewers are being paid. Of course, they're never paid.
They're never paid.
But I've just heard of ideas of creating something like the reviewer of the year that is published, that the journal publishes, you know, at the end of the year. That this is my list of reviewers, but here's the one that was the best this year. What do you think of that?
I don't think it matters what I think of it. I think it matters what you think of it. And I think on the face of it, did it work?
We haven't done that yet. That was an idea.
And what are the criteria for choosing reviewer of the year?
Okay, I like the idea to think about it for the future, because we did that last year with our list of reviewers. We've got 60 articles, double-blind review. You know, that takes a whole lot of people, you know,
and time.
Their time. And our editor responsible for the process, she looked at her list and she looked at the effects that, of course, we as editors we see what the reviewer brings back, right?
Yes.
And we ended up with a list of 5 reviewers who we really like, and they get snowed in with new work, and a list of, I don't know how many, which we decided aren't doing anything except sending the text back. So in that sense, you know, of course we eliminated.
Eliminate.
Those people from the bottom of the list, we're not
Yeah.
asking them to do any more work for us.
Sure.
But those 5 that did the best work, this is the only way that, as you said with your
Publons.
this is one way of giving them some kind of reward
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
good work that they're doing.
And I think this kind of, I think the plight of the peer reviewer has been sad, because no matter how much work they did, they never got credit for it in their university. And now, through Publons, it's possible to actually bring that number forward and see, not only did I teach all my classes and do all my research, but I also peer reviewed 20 papers. How about that? Because I think it's a hugely important effort for a scholar to be doing, not only to keep up with the literature, but also to influence the literature. And what I want to recommend is that these 5 top reviewers, they should hold classes to teach the others how to do it better. Yeah.
Hi, I'm not an editor. Eva Plewko from Institute of Mother and Child. We have a journal, Developmental Period Medicine. It's pediatric journal, but we have genetic. There are many different subjects. Yes. Our editor-in-chief is a very old-fashioned person, and she is very, very old, and she is very strong for all editors. Yeah. For all reviewers, for all authors. Authors sometimes are very scared about her, yes? She is keeping eye on everything. Yes, she is keeping eye on every single work which is published in this journal. So this is very special subjects and very important for authors to have their works in our journal. But we have some problems to be in your Web of Science. Yes, you are taking our works from Medline. Yeah, it's also not so bad place to be seen by authors. Yes, Medline for Medicine is a very important source, and this is for our ministry also to think about not only JCR, not only Scopus, but Medline is also very important for medicine. Yes, for medicine journals. Yes, and my question is like this: you thought that timelines is so important. We have 4 issues per year, but from time to time. It's not every year, but sometimes we have special issues or supplements or something. It's you can accept something like this.
Yes.
It's not regularly. Yes.
It's okay. It's okay. So the question is, for a quarterly journal, for a journal of any frequency, to publish supplemental issues, this is perfectly normal, and we index those supplemental issues. The thing that you need to understand is that the supplemental issues, try and have them at the same or superior quality to the regular issues, because those articles are going to be counted in the denominator of the impact factor. So yes, we cover the supplements, and be careful that the quality is the same as the regular issues, because it equals the whole journal, regular issues plus supplements. To have, speaking of that, this is a question that comes up from time to time with a new journal. Sometimes a new journal will inflate its initial content with conference proceedings papers.
Sometimes because something special we need to express, yes? Something important for pediatrics, for genetic or something, yeah? Something important, what's I don't know, maybe for medicine also.
Exactly. So when you include conference proceedings, the ideal situation is that the conference proceedings is also peer-reviewed. It is not unusual to have a conference proceeding that is not peer-reviewed. It's your choice. But my opinion, strictly my opinion, is to keep those non-peer-reviewed conference proceedings at a minimum and try and include only information, only articles that are peer-reviewed, definitely scholarly, and on the highest level that you can manage.
Any other questions?
Importantly, the number of rejected papers for assessment.
It's
for a new journal.
This is a kind of a theoretical question. I think, and I'm going to answer this in a broad way. we hear from publishers and editors of journals who are accepted for coverage in Web of Science, that suddenly they have many more submissions. And my opinion and even my advice is to maintain a very high rejection rate. When we're selecting journals for Web of Science, it's about 10% of all the journals that we select. In years gone by, it used to be we would do 2,000 journals every year and evaluate 2,000 journals, and if we selected 200, that would be normal. With ESCI, because we're not interested in citations and other things, as Jeffrey pointed out, the rejection rate is maybe 40% out of 100. So I think the rejection rate it's a matter that is to be dealt with by your editorial board, you and your editorial board. But if your rejection rate is high, I'm speaking completely theoretically here, the chances are that the quality of the papers that you select is going to be better. Dr. Garfield built the selection criteria for Web of Science based on the work of a librarian, S.C. Bradford, in the 30s. He theorized that the most important scholarship was contained in relatively few journals, relatively few papers, that these few journals received the most citations and published the most articles. So the most important science all research is found in a relatively small number of journals. The same is true at the article level. There are 1 million articles, but you can be sure that only about 10% of them are really going to have impact. And of that 10%, there's only going to be a few of them that have a really big impact. So try and be as selective as possible, and it will be reflected in the quality of your journal.
Yes.
Do you have any special rules for collecting, peer reviewing the opinions? Are there any special rules how a magazine should collect?
No.
No.
I'm going to say no. Do you have an opinion on that, Jeffrey?
Well, one opinion, I covered just briefly the Publons Academy.
Yeah.
So that is available to everyone free of charge. So you could recommend anyone wanting to do a review for you, what are their qualifications for doing a review? Have they gone through a process to be certified to do peer review? The Publons Academy is online. It is about 12 hours long, and there are examinations and things throughout it. And at the end of it, you're certified to do peer review. So I would think, one of the things is really seeing what they've done before, where they've worked before within their discipline. Certainly, that's one thing. And then what their qualifications are, what they've done, what have they published. I mean, you want people who are within their discipline looking at that discipline, certainly.
So Jeffrey, are you recommending then that one way to select reviewers is to see if they have completed the Academy?
I mean, if they've done, I think it's one thing that you could look at, or in Poland you could recommend.
I think so.
Everyone can go in there and do that for free.
But my question was more about how to collect the opinions from peer reviewers.
Oh, collect.
Okay.
Them, yeah.
Okay, we don't make public the review in Publons. We only make public what has been reviewed, the journal that I've done peer reviewed for. So even if your journal is using Publons and we build a system for you at the journal level to use Publons to manage peer review, no one sees the body of the text of the peer review. That's yours. So all I can say is that I think you'll find very quickly if they're writing a very short, non-descriptive review of of your title or of your manuscript that you'll know that they're maybe not as good for your publication, you know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there? I feel that there's at least one more question out there.
We have a few more minutes.
Who is it?
Anybody?
Okay, so I'm going to just repeat again so that no one forgets. Make sure your journal is publishing on time before you submit, and that you have enough papers so that it's going to be on time for the next year. And secondly, and even more importantly, make sure that your journal has an audience, that there is someone who's really interested in your journal. Okay? This is extremely important. It's so there's no shortage of papers. There's enough papers we could carpet the world with papers. But do we need to? Do we need to publish them? You have to decide this. And the expression that I like to use is less is more. Okay? So select few, reject many. Take the best, especially when you are covered in Web of Science and the manuscript starts streaming in. Then you need to be even more strict, because you have the opportunity to build up your quality and to raise the level of your journal.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think at this point we're going to hand over to Marcin and to look at the insights.
Thank you very much, Jeff, Jim.